The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, episode 111.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a quick plug, if you would, be sure to share the podcast on your favorite social media so that way more people can hear us talk about Star Wars. If you know of someone, friends, family, random acquaintances on Twitter and Facebook, let them know about our podcast because we would love to get more listeners and grow our show. Also, please be sure to rate the podcast because that definitely gets us seen by more people. And Spotify also allows you to rate podcasts, so please give us a 5-star rating there also to help us out. Today we have quite a big episode today. We are discussing the finale for the Book of Boba Fett, and the title of that one is In the Name of Honor. And joining me tonight on the panel is the mediator, as always, the Bendu, Angela Cialana.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here in the middle today.
Absolutely. On the other end of the galaxy or country, as it were, is old Ben himself, Mike Creevy.
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. Like a week.
Oh, yeah, he's coming. Oh, speaking of that, I guess we haven't talked about that yet.
Let's do it.
I'm trying to contain myself.
That's definitely, I think, the biggest news that has dropped since the finale aired was May 25th is the release date for the first episode for the Kenobi show on Disney+. So
there's just some kind of like ground rules where Angela and I have to like calm down because he's our favorite character.
I'm like gripping my chair so I don't like hit the microphone or something. Flailing my arms.
Well, but speaking of that, I mean, do you guys have any thoughts or theories? I know there's been people like analyzing the poster and what lightsaber he's holding, and I actually haven't really looked into that at all, but I'm kind of just waiting to be right. He is at a distance, but did you guys have any hopes or desires, or are you just gonna go with the desert sand flow, as it were?
Well, I know that every few days we're getting a beard update from Mike.
Yes.
So the facial hair is getting ready for this show, as well as the brain.
It is. I actually just trimmed it tonight because I need to kind of It's a whole hair tie-in thing. It's the weirdest thing I've ever. It wasn't because of Obi-Wan. It was like 2 weeks into it or 2 months into it. I was like, oh wait, I could do this. Like this will be fun. So anyway.
Sorry for you listeners. You can't see. Mike's definitely rocking the Obi-Wan episode 3 kind of look.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll do it up for the show. The only thing I was thinking is just and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, but regardless of Cobb Vanth's fate in the sort of current timeline, obviously they've had such, I think, it seems such enormous sort of success and fan joy over Cad Bane and his live action debut. He works in the Kenobi series. He and Obi-Wan were not exactly friendly. And so you have a tremendous background, I think, with the two of them from Clone Wars that could, I think, very reasonably tie into something. So that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And for me, I would say it's obvious, but, we don't get a whole lot inside Obi-Wan's head besides kind of the wisecracks and, the occasional like, I wonder if such and such. But no, really the inner workings of what's going on in his mind and heart and all that good stuff with the Force. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most. And I'm sure that we'll get some of that. When you have a guy out in the desert, you've got to have some kind of like inner monologue scenes. So yeah, I would be surprised if there wasn't any of that in this series.
Plus, Force ghosts Qui-Gon and Yoda. Like it can't it can not happen, but I think we need that. That's just that's probably the hope for me.
I'm also excited to see Hayden Christensen back as Anakin.
Oh yeah.
But I'm still not sure if they're gonna do flashbacks or if they're gonna like stick him in the suit with Darth Vader. Because
I've heard both. I don't know. We'll see.
I would hope for both because I would love to see Hayden's face, as Anakin interact with Obi-Wan. But you can only really do that in a flashback. So
he's one of those actors, I think, too, similar to like Matthew Broderick, where they do age, but,
right?
I mean, it would not be difficult to, even without de-aging. I think you could just with good makeup and lighting, you could make Hayden look 25 again or 22.
Yeah. He definitely would fit he still looks young. So definitely stay tuned for that. I was surprised that they didn't release it, or they're not releasing it on May 4th. So I think that because May 4th is a Wednesday, which fits their whole release schedule, I think that sort of, and maybe I'm hoping for more than what we're going to get, but I expect something to get revealed or announced at on May 4th. So,
well, somebody pointed out, I thought it was good because, we all heard about because the 25th is a Wednesday too. I hadn't thought of that, but the, the 45th anniversary of the release date of A New Hope. But what someone pointed out just today, I heard that I hadn't thought of specifically was that really was the day, in 1977 that audiences were first introduced to, among other things, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
So I thought that's cool. That is kind of neat. Some sort of connection there.
Either way, May I think is coming to be a pretty awesome month for Star Wars fans out there. So
yep.
So definitely, listeners, stay tuned because we will be discussing the Kenobi series when that airs later in May. Moving on to our Ham Solo segment. Mike, do you have any fun stories this week?
Unfortunately, I don't. Because I didn't have anything to order this week, but
perfect, because we have a listener who's got a brief story.
Good.
So
please,
you're off the hook.
I'm off the hook.
We got an email from Brandon Wallace, and he says, "Hi friends over at Secrets of Star Wars. This is Brandon Wallace. In honor of the newest character in our beloved Book of Boba Fett, please find the attached photo." So he sent us a photo of his Starbucks coffee cup with the name Cad Bane written on it. I can only imagine what the employee must have thought of when he had to say that. He says, you may remember that I sent in a drink labeled Han Solo a while back and mentioned that I got some laughs. This name just got stares. Wondering if it is because they were looking for my menacing sharp teeth and blaster on my hip, or they just thought I had a weird name. That's awesome. Keep up the great work, and thanks for taking the time to do the show, Brandon Wallace.
Thank you, Brandon. Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. I always think about that too late when I'm ordering something, and by the time that I think about it, it's already, Andrew's already on the name, and so thank you for sending that in, Brandon. And listeners, of course, if you have any fun Star Wars themed real life encounters like this, email us those, and we will share those on the show, and those are always fun to share. So, jumping into our discussion on the finale of the Book of Boba Fett, as always, I would throw it off to you guys first. What were your impressions of this episode?
I'll go first because I have a short answer to this. I was slightly let down, and I'm sad to say that. That was my first impression because I had so many expectations based off of the previous 2 episodes that were chock full of like cameos and surprises and all these things. So that's what I was primed for coming into this last episode. But, you know, every time that I go back and I rewatch something that I've had that experience with, I've always enjoyed it more. And it's because I'm not coming to it again with those expectations. I'm just enjoying it for what it is. And so as I rewatched this one, I definitely enjoyed it infinitely more than the first watch. So first impression, yes, it was not so great. But I did enjoy this episode.
Office fans, if you remember when Michael Scott wrote up one time the quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky, and then underneath Wayne Gretzky it says Michael Scott. Like he's crediting himself for quoting someone else. We could just do that with what Angela said, because that's it's like identical to basically my first impression too. Yeah, it was yeah, and I have, you know, obviously some specifics, probably stuff that a lot of our listeners, or many of our listeners, I'm sure, probably thought. So I think it's good to go over the particulars, but I'll just reiterate. Yeah, pretty much same. I didn't get to rewatch it more than I got to rewatch most of it a second time, so I haven't had a chance to go back and catch it. But it was certainly better, I think, the second time around. But yeah, and I don't know that I necessarily went in really. I didn't think I went in really expecting a lot of, like, a couple things. But yeah, I mean, the things I was expecting, or things that I was expecting, almost none of them happened, and then things that I imagined, most of those didn't either. So I was kind of like, darn, like I think I might have done something wrong here too. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I found it really busy, and just because it was the fight scene and the big battle, I guess I will kind of go a little bit the other way. There were definitely things that I was expecting that we didn't get. I expected the Tuskens to show up. I expected bigger cameos at the end, etc. But in terms of just the episode as a whole, it kind of fit what I was expecting for, I guess, the battle with the Pikes and all of that. And I think actually for some people, I hope that the Boba Fett that we saw in this episode was the Boba that they had been wanting to see.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's been a lot of just talk on social media about just, you know, how this isn't what they wanted and they're not enjoying it. And, you know, Boba Fett isn't the ruthless kind of bounty hunter that they all expected him to be. But when you see him fight in this episode, I mean, like, he's got the knee missiles, he's got the rocket launcher, they're using their jetpacks. I think at one point, like, it's either one of them, Boba or Din, like, uses his jetpack as just a way to dodge. And like, so like those fight scenes, I hope they did for me. They really hit that desire to see Boba in action. So for that, I did really appreciate that. But there was a lot going on. So it was definitely big. I think they checked all the boxes that they needed to for the finale, but I'm kind of okay with moving away from Tatooine for the time being.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? After we talk about an episode, I always enjoy it more. I always appreciate it more. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
And I think you brought up a really good point too, is like, if you go back and rewatch it, often that's when you can appreciate the things that you didn't appreciate the first time. You let go of some of those expectations and you can enjoy what's there rather than, you know, being a bit bummed out on what wasn't there.
Yeah.
So definitely, this is one of those shows that, my parents don't have Disney Plus, but my dad really enjoys Star Wars stuff. So like when I'm home on vacations or anything, like I will rewatch these with him, and that's always a lot of fun, because then I can then sort of sit back as the surprises come and watch his reaction. And of course he doesn't have at all the understanding. Like when Ahsoka showed up the first time, he was like, who's that? But then I get to jump into the like, oh, you don't know who that is? Let me explain and talk about it. And it's kind of a cool bonding moment with me and my dad. So I'll definitely be rewatching this for sure. So we'll just jump then into kind of the recap here. This was definitely Book of Boba Fett, focused on Boba Fett. It wasn't focused on Mandalorian like the last 2 episodes. And definitely all about this final battle with the Pikes. And it starts off with Boba Fennec and Din are in the ruins of the sanctuary, which I was really sad to see that bombed. That was kind of a cool place. And they're talking about the upcoming war with the Pikes, and Din is informing them that Freetown is going to come to help. And ultimately they decide that they are going to stay there in the sanctuary to hole up and fight against the Pikes rather than going back to the palace to stay with the people and fight. And then we get this scene with Cad Bane and the Pikes. And Angela, I imagine that this scene had some good news for you. We hear that Cad Bane was not the one who killed the Tusken Raiders, and but rather it was the Pikes who did that.
Yeah, I think that was a strategic writing choice. I just suspect, because I think they know that people like Cad Bane and that the Pikes needed to be more of like a vicious adversary, you know? So I can kind of see them saying, well, let's just have the Pikes just say that they did it.
I didn't expect that the Pikes were the ones behind it. In fact, I didn't really, I mean, everybody expected it was the Nikto speed, the gang, the speed biker gang. So it was a little shocking, I guess, to hear that the Pikes were behind it. But
not for me. I pretty much expected that it was somebody else.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I
Fennec kind of hinted at that, didn't she?
Yeah, Fennec was like, nah, I don't think the speeder bike gang took them out on their own, because I think Fennec kind of just thought the speeder bike gang was just like a bunch of punks, you know, who couldn't really fight. But yeah, I guess since we were going with like kind of the mob crime boss theme, I was surprised that the Pikes didn't like hire somebody else. I mean, maybe they did, but they just didn't tell us who it was. So yeah, I don't know. It was weird.
Maybe it's a bit odd that they were claiming responsibility, because I mean that then gets told to Boba, and the fear there would be is if Boba knows, then he's going to want to take revenge on the Pikes, which is exactly what Cad tries to do later.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
And it doesn't go well for the Pikes at all.
No.
So we get an X-Wing that arrives at Mos Eisley. This was kind of a fun scene with Grogu and R2-D2.
What do you guys think of that shot, by the way? It was just the way it felt like you were hanging on the wing. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a really cool, like, coming in so low, and it's you know,
nice.
I was not expecting it. You know, I did think it was Luke for a second, and that was super, like, surprising.
I was highly doubtful it was Luke. I didn't know who it was going to be, but
I just thought the whole time that it was, my opinion the whole time was that it was going to be a mistake to have him come in, because this is, I don't know if beneath him's the right way to put it, but it's just not, this isn't Jedi business to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sort of quasi-quoting episode 2 again there, Father. Not exactly. Jedi business, go back to your drinks. But that's not, like, Luke's not going to roll into a gang fight. You know, that's just not, that doesn't fit. So I never really thought he was coming. But I didn't expect him, so somebody referred to it, I think it was one of the Rebel Force radio guys referred to it as like a space Uber. Like, he just throws, puts the kid in the X-Wing, he's like, take him home. Like, but no. I said, oh yeah, but R2's the right person for that, though, of course. So,
yeah, and of course the misdirect there was that you most watchers probably assumed it was Well, I mean, maybe most viewers thought it was Grogu, but Pele obviously thought it was one of the New Republic officers, which is really funny. She's like, you know,
oh my gosh, every scene with her, it's hilarious.
She's so great. I didn't get the first time around. I was so fixated on just looking at the X-wing and trying to be like, who's in there? I loved like how much she was freaking out and like every little like, put that away, hide that, put a tarp over that. Like everything is like some kind of violation, you know?
Oh, yeah. So, and I think this fits what we thought was going to happen. Granted, I didn't think Grogu was going to show up in the middle of the battle, the finale. In fact, I didn't think we were going to see Grogu again, and I continually am proven wrong on that front. But the fact that he chose the Mandalorian Beskar chainmail shirt over Yoda's lightsaber and chose to be a Mandalorian versus a Jedi Knight, it fits with what we know is coming, and I think we all kind of expected it, but this changes everything that I suspected for Mandalorian season 3, though.
Well, thematically it fits too, right? Like by choosing the armor, he chose family, and that ties into like even the last scene between Cad and Boba, which I will get into in depth later on. But he says, "I've got armor," and it's like armor kind of equals family, I think.
Well, if I may, this is a good spot for the Maximilian Kolbe random reference that I told you guys before we started recording, and it's a stretch, you know. But what made me think of it this morning was I'm reading a biography of him, and it was sharing the story of when he was a kid, and he had the vision of the Blessed Mother offering him the Red Crown of Martyrdom or the White Crown of Purity, and he could choose one. Okay, so I'm kind of overplaying my hand here a little bit, but I couldn't help but think for a moment, you're reading this book, I'm like, wait a minute, that's a little like Luke offering him one, because my theory is that he chose both of them, and he's got that little lightsaber under his cloak, and you can't see it, and he didn't want to hurt the Rancor. We'll get to that later. So like, it was funny because I was going back and I was like, wait a minute, he could have it. I mean, Yoda had it. We didn't know he did, right? You know, episode 2, he pulls his cloak back and it's there.
Yep.
So I still think he does have it. We'll see. And I think it's supposed to be a surprise. Because again, practically, what is Luke supposed to do with that thing? It's like a toothpick.
I mean,
like it's not. It's like
but
this
there's
big.
creatures of all sizes that live in the galaxy.
There are. So sure, but we'll
Grogu
see.
Grogu is so small. Like
he is.
He's probably very close to the size of that hilt.
I think it's actually pretty big for him, quite frankly. But yeah, so
I don't think he could actually lift it up.
Not really wielding it. But no, we'll see about that.
But no, I just
hands. Yeah. I just thought, and maybe, I don't know if we'll get into this later. If so, just let me know. I just wondered, I think like a lot of people, everything that happened between him and Mando is something I've wanted to see, and I'm so happy. But it's like, I don't know. I was like, was this the right place for it? I mean, like we all love it, but I'm just like, I don't really know how many people there are out there watching this who haven't watched Mandalorian. So I don't really know how much sense it makes to really worry about that too much when you're writing, like we have to do everything as if no one's watching anything but this, right. But by the same token, it is tricky for me because it's like the story, there's a lot of things like this for me in this show where this story rules, right? It has to kind of stand on its own, it has to be, I think, able to kind of stand on its own 2 feet. And I'm not really sure yet if it can. I guess I'm not really sure how to look at the show itself just yet. As far as, in fact, my last note was why Book of Boba Fett? Of like I love it, but it's like, it just does something I think we'll all be kind of talking about for a while. We'll see.
I appreciate the story flow between the two series as sort of not just like a cameo or not just a one-off thing, but anyone who's watching the Book of Boba Fett and hasn't watched The Mandalorian, I suspect the scene with Grogu or all the scenes with Grogu is going to prompt them to go back and watch Mandalorian season 1, which I think is perfectly, appropriate and good. And that's how you can draw more people into it. Yeah, I don't know if we needed a series on Boba Fett specifically. It will find out, I guess, if they do a season 2 and where they would go with that.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts, and we can kind of maybe wait till the end to talk about some of those kind of things.
Yeah.
But I think in general, I mean, I'm always hesitant to like complain too much, because we're getting more Star Wars, and and even if seeing Boba Fett in this kind of a context was not at all what I was expecting out of the Book of Boba Fett, I have enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's not my top show. I definitely like The Mandalorian better, but it's still been fun. And I think as long as Star Wars continues to be fun and hits those core themes that we like to talk about, I'm gonna be on board for whatever show they come up with.
Well, and that's like I even said we've talked before a little bit about we haven't gone into it too much on our show, but like I've said a couple times about Resistance, like I enjoyed Resistance, but like I don't really, it's not the one, like if I have to, I'm going to start going back, like Wednesday mornings is my Star Wars morning. So like I'm going to keep this tradition going. And I was like, so what am I going to start watching this Wednesday? Resistance isn't on my list.
Right.
It's just, so no offense to it, but it's just like, So, I think that's part of it too. The rewatch factor, or is this one you're going to keep going back to the well? Maybe certain episodes, for sure. But we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of rewatch, and this is totally unrelated at all, but since I do quite a bit of traveling, I just started to listen to the novelization of episode 2. And
cool.
It's pretty cool because the novelization is able to add scenes that weren't in the movie. So you get more scenes and more backstory behind some of, what's going on. So either way,
who narrates that? Is it because like Mark Thompson does almost everything now? But was it an old?
This was I think before Mark Thompson kind of became big into it. So it's
okay.
I don't even want to say a name because I'm going to probably not get it right, but he does a pretty good job. He does a pretty good Obi-Wan voice. So
I'll have to check it out now.
yeah, it's fun. Anyways, back to Tatooine. We continue to have the setup for the war that's coming. The patrols. The group has patrols in each of the sectors. So like, the Gamorreans are in the Klatooinian territory, and I those two guys, I feel so bad.
If we had a hat, we could. Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to make a pigs flying joke, but first of all, Hondo already did that with the Ugnaught. Do you remember that? Yeah, from Rebels, they can fly. So I was like,
but it was but we first saw them in the series, the Klatooinians. We saw them as butchers.
Yeah.
And here they are attacking some big pigs.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's sad. It's like,
Well, and like they're the only ones out of sort of the main cast of characters that aren't just kind of, Pike number 1 or Pike number 2, but they've been in the thick of things from the beginning, and they were the only ones that died. And
well, look, I mean, in a way, I got to give credit to this show, because in a way they because of that, they sort of raised the stakes.
Right.
Honestly,
exactly.
I think higher than Rise of Skywalker did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in terms, you know what I mean? Just in terms of like, well, these have been important guys, and this is getting real. I felt that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an unexpected death when they were pushed off the cliff. But then, like, Chrysanthemum was in the Trandoshan territory. I should have expected him to survive, but I expected him to die too. And then when he came back, it was
it was a good surprise.
Yeah.
It fit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, but also just Chrysanthemum he's a Wookiee, and those things they're pretty powerful.
I don't know what they're made of,
creatures.
but it's some kind of superior material.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the only thing tougher in the episode was the rancor.
and the droids. But we'll get to
jeez.
Can I just say the best nickname in Star Wars now is Santo? Like when I heard awesome. Boba call Santo, I was just like, that is so cool. I love that.
Well, and that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, but that's Spanish for saint, right?
Mm-hmm. Or holy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Santo, Santo. Holy, holy, holy. Yeah. So, yeah.
Which itself carries a little bit of like a Wild West vibe to it, doesn't it? Just a little, like a Western.
Yep.
In a way. Yeah. That's just cool.
Absolutely. Mm. And it sounded so natural coming out of Tamara Morrison's mouth, Santo.
And I was
seems
happy
like something he would call him.
I was happy to see them, on the same side. I know that Chrysanthemum was hired to kill Boba earlier in the season, so no hard feelings. But there's obviously a sense of Boba he cares that Santo is alive and is glad for it, rather than just kind of looking at him as muscle. So I appreciated that for sure. And then the third group, the mods, are in the Aqualish territory, and they are the first to kind of have some issues. But before that happens, we have the first of two standoffs between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, because Cad comes to negotiate on behalf of the Pikes. And of course that's not going to work. We know this is not going to end, with a let's sit down and have peace negotiations here. And so that kind of goes south. Cad reveals to Boba that the Pikes were the ones that killed the Tuskens. And I think that this was very strategic for Cad. I think this was him trying to pull Boba Fett out and act irrationally in order for them to take him down.
And then the fact that, Fennec, I heard somebody else online say Fennec should get a raise for for coaching Boba down. But Boba exercising restraint is a character development revelation. Because before we saw him, he was just under the impression that the Niktos were the ones, and he just went down, he just gunned them down in cold blood, So, and then just looking at Boba's history, his childhood, that we've gotten to know through the animated series, he was really hot-headed, as a kid, and kind of reactionary. So I think it was, for me at least, having all that backstory to see him get really upset, and then takes a while, but it's okay, no, we're going to do this on our terms. That was a character development moment.
Well, and I think there too is there's some just kind of general advice for us too, that, we should not react out of an emotional state, because we are more likely to say something uncharitable, do something uncharitable when we're acting with emotion at the forefront of our mind, rather than letting reason kind of lead what we say and what we do. So definitely, watching this, you pick up on that we're not feeling quite the betrayal that Boba is. So we're recognizing what Fennec is saying is the right course of action. But it's harder when you're in the moment of a betrayal, of someone, doing something or saying something to you that just spikes your anger. It's harder when you're in that moment to then recognize, okay, I just need to pause, step back, and then let the emotion settle, and then respond with reason leading it, which just leads to more charitable actions. So
better for everybody, I think.
Yeah. Kind of fun to have the assassin being the one to kind of lead that little piece of advice. So then the war is definitely getting kicked off. The mods are attacked, and they're the first to be attacked. Of course, the Aqualish, the Klatooinians, the Trandoshans all decide to not abide by their non-engagement policy that they agreed with Boba, and they've all turned on Boba and the gang. And that's where the Gamorreans perish, and Chrysanthemum is attacked. But then the mods are being attacked, and Fennec recognizes that they're already outnumbered, and she has to go to Mos Eisley to try to take out the lead of the Pike Syndicate. But on her way out, she rescues the mods from their particular peril. And this was kind of a fun scene. I just wanted to point out there's an interaction between Drash, the girl who's one of the mods, with Fennec, and I thought it was kind of fun. She says thank you, and Fennec notes that she has manners and she likes it, and she says you're welcome, and she lowers her mask a little bit to say that. Mm-hmm. And I found that interesting because we've talked before even how the mask, just the mask can be a barrier to relationship and encounters. And so I liked how she pulled down her mask because there was a shared, experience there. There was a shared, Fennec just saved their lives. And so there was a, gratitude exchange. And so I appreciated her lowering her mask just a little bit to say that and not be so hidden away. The war continues. The Pikes show up at the sanctuary, and this was also quite comical.
It was hilarious. The negotiation scene was hilarious.
I had to write it out. So yeah, the Major Domo, I think, is one of my favorite characters out of this whole series. Just, he's so over the top, and he's one of those that could just talk for 10 minutes and say absolutely nothing, and I love him. But so Boba's trying, or he allows the Major Domo to go negotiate on his behalf, and the exact words that Boba has in his offer is this, and I wrote it down because it was just so if you ever want to insult someone, this is apparently how you do it with flair. He said, you will leave the planet and your spice trade. If you refuse these terms, the arid sands of Tatooine will once again flourish with flowered fields, fertilized with the bodies of your dead. So
I think when Boba's dad was, I was going to do Boba's dad was like going away all the time, and he's home sad. He's just doing nothing but like reading Homer, or something like. Boba's the poet. Who knew?
Oh, yeah. It was a very elegant way to insult the Pikes
and to stall for time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because that's what he was doing, right? Yep. I mean, he never meant to negotiate.
Yeah, I think when I first saw the scene and the Major Domo offered to go negotiate, I was surprised. Like, what would Boba even offer in that kind of a negotiation? So it makes total sense there. The other thing to point out about that scene was the solidarity and the camaraderie that Din and Boba had.
Well, and if I may on that point, because I think this is an interesting connection with, I just want to see what you guys think, as far as there's so much, I think, in that part that for me personally, just where I'd like to see, and we've talked about before, certain things go with the Mandalorian, certain things I've said I'd like to see specifically with, eventually I'd like to see Boba as the Mandalore. I think personally, this whole experience, they even hint at it a little at the end, but this whole experience of him helping people to get their home back and seeking family and seeking, honor and all this. I feel like I still don't think this is the end for him by any stretch, but I think that scene maybe had some of the best seeds, at least in my opinion, as far as like Boba doesn't seem to personally care about like, the Children of the Watch code.
Right.
But he cares about who he can trust. And he's not like, we'll get to later with Cad, some of his contrary philosophy, right? About looking out for number one, that kind of thing. Like, and I feel like that's that tension, you know, just protect yourself. Your armor is your armor for you to not get killed, or you pop that helmet off once in a while. It's just, there's so many of these things we've been talking about that are clearly there on purpose. It's just really neat to see it playing out.
Well, and I think this could be one of those key moments too, where the title of the episode is very much at play. In the name of honor, that Din has you know, said that he's going to help Boba, and he is not going to betray his word, and he's going to honor that. And I'm sure he even looks at Boba as somewhat of a brother, you know, if they share the Mandalorian heritage there. And I mean, they're both willing to die together as brothers, and no hesitation. I mean, Boba gave Din,
it's not for pay, right? He's not getting paid. It's free. Yep.
So yeah, I firmly expect that there's going to be more with them two in the future as well. Because they have a bond that's already deeper than, he's not just a hired hand. So of course, then after the failed negotiation, which I was really glad that the Major Domo wasn't shot in that scene. I kind of expected him to.
He's like, his words.
Right. So the war kicks off in full steam at that point, and that was a really cool fight scene. Especially seeing Boba and Din kind of protecting each other, and kind of, you know, both of them using as many of their armaments and their weapons as they could.
And just coming in on the jetpacks.
It justified everything. It justified every piece of
like even and that's where we see, like I said, the knee missiles with Boba, the whistling birds with Din. And they just, of course, are not able to overcome the sheer numbers of the Pikes. And thankfully, at that point, Freetown arrives, which I totally expected Freetown to show up. I mean,
all 8 of them. No, I'm sorry. I was like, it's not a big town. I mean, we know that. It's like, well, good
Bring
for them.
all the people of fighting age. It's like, okay, there's Bob, there's Joe, there's
Frank. Deputy Scott. Oh, no, sorry.
No more Deputy Scott. Yeah. I know. But I love how the music got really like a little more wild or Old West at that point too. It was very cool. Kind of like dun 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 dun. Here comes, you know, saving the day. You know, people of Freetown. Yeah, it's just it's so Western. It's like I loved it. It's corny, but it's great at the same time. Like it's the corn with like the butter on it and like little seasoning, salt. You know, like
they're in a speeder, not a stagecoach or a covered wagon. That's the only.
Right. Another thing to point out there that I wish they had more time to go into, but there's a little bit of conflict between the city folk and the country boys. You know,
there always is.
Right. They kind of have names for each other. The mods call the Freetown people sand scurriers, and the Freetown people call the mods city rats. And so there was definitely some they kind of get over that as they're fighting together, which was nice, but that there wasn't a whole lot of time to kind of delve into that. But it's true. I mean, we see that all the time too. Just you sort of have even an unfair sort of idea of what people who are different than you are like, and it's important to remember the humanity that we all share. So
everybody's got that county or that or that town or it's
yep. Or if you're if you're in Wyoming or Laramie specifically, where I am, I mean, we have the university has a big rivalry with the Colorado State University in Fort Collins. I mean, so there's names that are thrown back and forth, and I mean, so it's a little bit more playful, but some people really take it just a little too personal and too far. Like,
yeah,
competition is nice, but
like that's how you get just north of me the insanity of the Yankees Red Sox thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I learned the hard way to stay away from that one.
Yeah.
I don't have any skin in any game, but I made a joke once in college, and it was like, I had a friend Pat from Boston and a friend Pat from New York. Go figure. And there, I was like, whoops, that wasn't a good thing to do. Like, whoops. Oh,
yeah. Nothing like competition to bring out the.
Maybe that's why.
Emotions.
Maybe that's why Boba swears his allegiance to no one, or so he said. So that's changing.
Yep. Yeah. So the war continues in full force with Chrysanthemum showing up, which was very exciting to me because I thought he had died, and this is when we get the arrival of the two huge scorpion droids. So
Scorpionic, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they look like a big scorpion, but Angela, you've got the name right.
Yeah, Pelly says it. I take my notes from Pelly. Whatever she says goes. So.
yeah. Well, she would know. So it's interesting. These droids. This is where I'm going to pull out my Legends key cat. So, I have this book called The New Essential Guide to Droids. It's Legends only, so it's not canon, but it was written. I'm not even sure exactly when, but it's got a list of every droid that was in existence at the time that it was written 10 or 15 years ago. And this particular Annihilator Droid is in the book.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And so what you learn about it, because it doesn't show up in any of the movies or even in Clone Wars. I don't think it shows up at all. It is a separatist droid similar to the droidicas that you see in episode 1 and episode 2, except for it's quite a bit more massive and more deadly, clearly. And it was the description here in the book relates that it is incredibly expensive to manufacture, and so it's incredibly rare. There were only 100 in existence at the time of the Clone Wars. So now, whether or not that's all true in canon or not, I think you could agree that these droids are definitely expensive and probably very rare. But the Pikes somehow got a hold of these droids, and they are incredibly deadly.
Do you guys know if, like, I didn't get a chance to go back and watch the sound. What came to my mind, the sound effect, and it might be the same one, but it's definitely very similar to, if not identical to, the sound effect of the shields that the Gungans had over them in episode 1. That ricocheting sound. I can't remember if that's the same sound that you get from the droidicas as well.
I think
I
definitely
it's probably
similar.
Close or similar. Yeah.
Similar,
But that was, you know, all these prequel, which again, I don't really think there has been a whole lot before this show. I don't recall a whole lot of prequel love outside of some of the animated series, you know, with getting some of the you know, like you'll see battle droids show up like in an old warehouse or something in Resistance even, or something like that, which is cool, you know, but like this was neat. Like live action.
I think we're far enough time wise from the prequels, you know, early 2000s, that I think that they've garnished enough nostalgic feelings, and they have their faults too, but I think it's definitely the time is right for them to pull.
Yeah,
I mean, like the Naboo Starfighter. That was so cool to see, and we still get to see it coming in new episodes.
Yeah.
And the callbacks I think are resonating with, you know, especially those of us who grew up with the prequels. So and this would fit right in with that. I mean, it's similar to the droidica, just a lot bigger, and it's still pulling from Legends and making something that was Legends canon, which is also really cool. So these droids also are I mean, their shields are, we find out in the episode that they're resistant to energy weapons, and they're resistant to the kinetic weapons, which have too much velocity. So they kind of have to regroup and figure out a different plan. But before that, they all have to kind of scatter and retreat, and the droids are going down 2 different roads, one chasing the Freetown group and one chasing Boba and Din. And at this point there was I don't even know if we should talk about it, but what did you guys think of at one point? This is where Scad, one of the modders, does the infamous spin and then shoot.
I wondered what you were going to bring up.
I don't know if I want to bring it up because, to be honest,
I have one thing to say about it.
I don't really feel like it's that big of a deal, or that like it was just kind of fun. But I guess I wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts. I don't.
Well, to be fair, there's a great video. I wish Thomas were here, because his specifically his swordsmanship expertise, because I talked to him about this before. But there's a video floating around. There's a couple of them now, but there was a really interesting one, I thought, and it's not super long, where a sword fighting expert rated the lightsaber scenes from the Star Wars movies, and and he didn't hold back. It was like, no, this, and he was saying he's a big fan too, and he's like, this is awesome, but like, it's not a sword fight, it's a dance.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, versus some other ones. And some of the ones we like the best are the ones that are the least like an actual fight at all, And so from just a purely like, that's kind of silly move, I was like, I didn't make a big deal of it. My favorite thing that's happened with it online that I've seen, though, is like a 5-second clip on YouTube where someone just took it, where he does the spin, and then when he shoots, it cuts over to when Cad shoots Boba. And it just shows Boba flying down, and he's like, well, I guess he took the pikes, off. Or so no, I didn't think it was worth saying more than what I just said.
Yeah.
But it was funny. I kind of liked it.
Was he spinning to get like his modified eye like closer to the scene, or I don't know? I'm trying to do what
that's all that matters.
St. Augustine says, like, give people the the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But admittedly, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Maybe if more stormtroopers would spin around, they'd hit their targets. I don't know. Like he's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I tried to headcanon it too a little bit.
And he's my favorite mod, I think, so far. I think he holds up, I think, pretty well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it Scad? Was it Drash?
Scad.
Drash is good too. I thought this was their best episode, I thought, overall. Mm-hmm. Still have something's off for me with it. I think I have an idea, but I'll save that to the end just to, if anyone from Lucasfilm is listening, I have just a suggestion. It's not a critique. I don't know.
I think my biggest issue with it is not the scene or at all anything about the spin. My biggest issue is the issues that people make of it. and even the animosity that's thrown out about the little, this spin has gotten so much hatred. And
I'm glad I haven't seen that.
Twitter's a fun place to be, but it's also not a fun place to be. So yeah, I've kind of, I don't like when people just kind of take it too far and get super nitpicky and like I'm watching this to enjoy it, and and that's, I found it kind of funny and comical, and okay, whatever, and move on to the next scene, So either way, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. Because there's way more exciting things coming, especially Paley shows up with Grogu, which I wasn't expecting again at all. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense that she would make a trip to Mos Espa to deliver Grogu. And then, thankfully they keep showing like the big overviews of Mos Espa. It's not a small town. So it is perfectly plausible in my mind for her to show up and not even realize that there's something going on, and then just happen to be going down the wrong street, and there's the there's Din and there's this big huge droid chasing him. So that was fun to see them show up, and Peli, kind of steals every scene she's in. She's great. I really hope she keeps coming back for more seasons. I kind of thought she was going to be a one-off character, but she is so much fun.
So who cried when Grogu force leapt into Mike's raising his hand?
That's why he was learning how to jump.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I was waiting for like Renata right now is like prime sort of like Grogu age. So my daughter, my second daughter. So she's like, well, like the sort of, mechanics of her getting around and a lot of the similar sounds and stuff. So, but she's in the uppy phase. Like she's literally running around going uppy. And I was like, oh gosh, if she could force jump, actually, nobody wants that. It would be disastrous. But no, that was so adorable.
Well, and it makes perfect sense too. You share the dad role that Din does. That's awesome. Yeah, and again, I wasn't expecting them to be reunited quite so soon, and especially in this kind of a context. But even Grogu is showing. I mean, he's vulnerable, but he can also hold his own too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and can I just add one thing there, Father, too? Because when I said earlier about this, like just my kind of back and forth on, the placement of this, is this where this should happen? But I thought, I feel like your other alternative realistically would be, build and build and build and build to Mandalorian season 3. And like, oh my gosh, we're so excited for Mandalorian season 3 and what we saw in Book of Boba Fett. And then somewhere like you basically get a tremendous amount, at least of the first episode, getting you back in this, like, and there he is, and they're separated, and then he has to talk to Luke, and there's this choice, and I don't know. I think it's like, no, that's done. And so now it's just, we can just start season 3. I think it really gave us a better launch into season 3, probably when it's all playing out. That's my guess.
Well, and like I said, it sort of changes my trajectory for what I thought season 3 would be.
Right.
Because I expected it to be all about Mandalore. And it might still very likely be about Mandalore, but I just expected Grogu to be a cameo at most. And instead, it's definitely going to be a family affair now going forward, which is I think what we all wanted to see, and I think it'll be good.
He's pretty talented and seems to be. He's very brave. This is something too. I'd love to we could do a whole thing on the courage and the arc, because he's not a little scared kid, and Luke recalling the memories, making him face that, that's something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but it'll be neat to see that play out, him learning that courage. And the last thing Mando said to him right into season 2, don't be afraid. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, well, and even Ahsoka mentioned that too, that like fear of losing Din could she was worried that Grogu was gonna go down the same path as Anakin, and so maybe he's learning to not act out of fear. I mean, he's definitely, he shows his courage in multiple scenes coming up, with the droid, and the Rancor, both of them. Speaking of the Rancor, this was the, hidden backup that Boba was bringing to the show. And I think this was another one of those things that everybody wanted to see, and so I'm really glad that we got to see it. Boba riding his Rancor into battle.
There was so much talk about it that it wasn't as much of a cool surprise thing as it I guess it could have been. But I mean, you kind of have to, if you're going to have Boba riding a Rancor, which we've never seen anybody do before, you kind of have to set it up earlier on that like he's training for it. So it makes sense. Yeah. But one of the cool things that I noticed on my second watch is that obviously we get this amazing reveal. And I don't know, some people have said it's kind of reminiscent of, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. When the Rancor comes in what is the big lizard? Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or King Kong too.
Yeah, King Kong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those movies that there's kind of some similarity there.
Yeah.
But I also noticed like when the Rancor starts attacking the droid, and then Din notices that, you know, the shield has concentrated its energy to the front, that then he's got that in to go in with the Darksaber, and he puts Grogu down. He's like, I'm going to take care of this. You know, Dad's going to do it. And he gets the Darksaber, and he's holding it with one hand as he's going in, and it's upright as he's going into the force field around the droid. And I was like, this is maybe the first time that he's ever held it like upright so easily, like not without immense amount of effort. So I just wondered if it was because, you know, he was kind of like on dad duty and he was like, I'm going to protect my son type of thing, you know, like that interior wrestling, or that inner conflict that we've talked about, how, you know, that's why the sword is heavy, like the Darksaber's heavy, is because Sabine had inner conflict, you know, when she was training with it, and Paz, you know, Vizsla obviously had some inner conflict going on, and Din. So, but maybe, you know, as he kind of like, it's almost like he knows his vocation now, like he's just going for it, you know. So I don't know.
Do you guys ever see Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe?
No.
Which is a great bio movie about Jim Braddock, the boxer, like in the Depression era. And, you know, he's a pretty successful boxer, and then he loses this fight and kind of breaks his hand. And then he starts to kind of go downhill for a little while. The Depression hits, and it's kind of about him getting unexpectedly back into boxing when his family was really destitute. And he starts surprising everyone, winning all these matches and everything. And at one point they're doing a press conference, and they're asking him, like, how did this happen? How'd you turn the corner here? And he says something to the effect of, because I know what I'm fighting for now. And they say, what are you fighting for? And he goes, milk. You know, like there's this real, just kind of blunt, like, you know, yeah. So that came to my mind there, because I'll have to go back and look. I didn't notice the difference with the saber, but yeah, it's not some sort of code, you know, that I'm committing to. Which, you know, I'm pro Creed, everybody. I want to be clear on that right now. But it's you know, we all know that challenge where when it's like somehow it has to not just be theory for you. Yeah. You know, there has to be a tangible, I'm doing it because, you know, this or that's that extra boost. You know,
even there with Din, it's almost instinctual too.
Yeah.
You know, there's not this. Yeah, there's not the theory. There's not the overthinking it. It's, I'm in dad mode and I'm going to protect, and you just do it rather than think about it. And that can kind of cut through some of that inner conflict.
Oh, by the way, on a much less serious note, when he's looking at the shirt, I was laughing because I felt like all these little things they put in there for all of us. That's for everyone who's nervous when you send something and you don't know if someone received it. Like that's it's like, oh, you got it. You got the shirt. Great.
I like how he calls it the shirt too.
Yeah.
It's not like there's not some fancy name for it or anything. It's like, it's the shirt.
it's their common garb.
That's right. You're going to see Funko Pops with the child featuring the shirt.
It's like when my dad went to a conference or something for work and like sent me something from Disney World or something because he was in Florida, you know, and it's like, oh, you got this shirt. Yeah.
Oh, one more. I forgot when we were talking about Peli earlier when the X-Wing lands. What did you guys think of her comment, you know, hearing his name and being like, that's a terrible name. I laughed so hard. Like, I can't believe that wasn't like obviously on purpose from Favreau because of that whole discussion.
But I found it comical because I've loved the name Grogu. There's sometimes that you get a name reveal and it just doesn't stick.
Right.
Like I still don't.
Like, oh, what was that name again? Yeah.
I still don't think that Sheev Palpatine is really like, and okay, that's just my take on it. But like Grogu, I've been a fan of that name from day one. So yeah. So when Peli said that, I was like, okay, she's just gonna call him Bright Eyes, and okay,
that's cute.
she's like one of those old ladies that just calls everybody honey. Like, okay, that's fine. So, yeah. And rancors, I mean, yeah, they are awesome. This was, I think, the coolest rancor scenes that we've seen. We've had them.
Goodness.
I mean, we've had them in Clone Wars and Rebels and those sorts of things, but like this was really cool to see the rancor just tear apart that droid. So
yeah.
Well, and I know there's been and I was speculating too, possibly Omega, especially once we got to like episode, like the midway point, I sort of didn't think it would happen anymore because I thought it's just too building up to Cad Bane being the last new character introduced. I think was smart because it could have gone way, all the speculation like, oh, Han's going to be in it and Leia, and I'm like, stop. Like we need to kind of cap it. It's like a party when too many people keep showing up. Like I only got like the one sleeve of Sprite here. I don't know, but I had forgotten. And then when I see Boba on the Rancor, which we all hoped, of course, was coming, I was like, well, Omega riding the little baby Rancor. I was
really hoping for Omega. That was my biggest.
I think that's something. That's a little visual cue. I think it'll happen eventually somehow. But yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. season 2.
I hope so.
Well, and you'd think like he doesn't seem. My big thing with her and him is it doesn't seem like there's even the slightest hint in this version of Boba that he's even aware of her.
Right.
So I think that kind of seems, at least to me, to rule out my thoughts of like Bad Batch season 2, her meeting. Like, I don't think they've met at all. Mm-hmm. Like for 30 years, like or 20, almost 30 years. So if it happens, I think it'll happen forward.
Yeah, it makes sense that she would be in hiding, right? Because of her situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole other show. Sorry. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I want to get to, so at this point, the Rancors have totally demolished both of the droids, even, the Freetown people are saved, and so is the others with the other droid, which leads to the final confrontation that I really want to hear Angela's take on between Cad and Boba, because that was definitely like the crescendo where things were gonna end on this climax with. So
my TED Talk.
Back to you.
Seriously. But Mike saying that they really kind of led up to Cad Bane being the last character that they introduced is so fitting, because I think this is the reason why Cad is the only threat that can throw Boba off the Rancor. And, he's the only threat that can just like walk up to the Rancor, throw some fire in its face enough to have it, just, okay, because the Rancor to me symbolizes Boba's power that he has amassed, like his success, his literally like his high status, on the planet, that he's come to like all this point, and he's got like Jabba's throne and everything, but it's knocked off when Cad Bane comes. And the reason is because, to me, Cad Bane represents Boba's past, because this is canon from a couple of kind of side book type comic things that Cad actually, as a favor to Jango, trained Boba when he was a kid, and kind of raised him to be, he was sort of like a father, but not in a good sense, because he apparently mistreated Boba, didn't show any affection or anything like that. So maybe more like a manipulative father or an abusive father. And so he is the guy who really kind of brought Boba down. I mean, he taught him a lot of practical things about how to survive and how to fight, but he also brought him down mentally, I think, psychologically. And so the idea that this is the guy that throws Boba off the Rancor at the end makes perfect sense. And it's the final confrontation, because it's sort of like, yeah, this is the end of the Book of Boba Fett. This is about Boba Fett. Like, it's about his story. And so here he is, he's grown up. He's this guy that we all kind of expected him to be, right, in this big fight. But the bigger fight is the interior scars, right? The inner wounds. And so Bain says, I'm still faster than you. And Boba says that may be, but I have armor. And again, going back to that concept of armor, I think representing in this series, family. Grogu's shirt, as I said, the Mandalorians talking about how they use their material for armor, not for weapons. And we know that Boba's armor belonged to his father, right? So that whole concept of armor and family. And then plus Boba, underneath his armor, he wears that wrapping that he got from the Tuskens. So that's his family connection too. So this concept that like, yeah, you might be faster than me, but I've got my armor. I couldn't help but think of like the spiritual life too. Like, you know, we have an opponent, an adversary, like a spiritual adversary who is smart, you know, cunning, like all those things. And we're not as cunning. We're not as, you know, fill in the blank, but we have our family. We have our spiritual family. And that's what makes us strong. And so we've got to hold on to that. And then
and he's the accuser too, just to throw that in, because he's very accusing of Boba. And
yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I was just going to get into. Like the whole time,
oh, sorry,
he's insulting him. No, please.
Yeah.
He's insulting him. He's tearing him down. He's ripping him apart. He's saying, "I knew you were a killer. You're a killer." You know, he's throwing that in his face, and then he literally rips off his helmet and exposes his face.
Right.
And you guys, you know, we've been talking so much on the show about how the helmet and like all of that, like covering that up, like your face, and also the clones, and what does it mean for Boba to be a clone, and his face is all over the galaxy, right? Like, who is Boba Fett? So here we are at the end of this series, and it's like Boba Fett's face is exposed, and here he is facing his, like, maybe his greatest adversary, right? And that's when we kind of realize, like, what makes him different from all the other clones, from his dad. It's the Tuskens. It's what he learned from the Tuskens. And so that's where he pulls out the gaffy stick and he uses that to defeat his greatest adversary. That was his family. That was like the first real family that he had after his, you know, dad. I don't know if he really felt that he had a family with his dad in reality, because his dad was always gone. And, you know, it's kind of like this weird thing that we saw in the flashbacks in this season. Whereas, so I don't know if he would call that family based on his experience with the Tuskens, but anyways,
and that's, by the way, the lowest tech of anything he has is that stick,
right?
You know?
Yeah. And just for a last thing, like, you know, the last thing that Cad says to him is, I knew you were a killer. Right? Like, even when he's like got the stake in, you know, like, I knew you were a killer. And so to me, Boba kind of uses what represents his family to silence the accuser, right? To silence that voice. And so I just, wow, like, I know, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, but seriously, like, that was amazing to me. Like, that scene
Cad talk
was so symbolic.
Yeah. Well, and even Cad mentions too, he says, you know, this is my final lesson to you.
Yeah.
Look out for yourself. Everything else is weakness. And that fits how Cad's perspective on things, that, he's only looking out for himself. But it also reveals that because Boba's not just looking out for himself, that is also part of the whole family reality. And that's why he ultimately prevails, is because he's not acting like that. So, that's incredibly insightful. And
so I just think, like, you know, back to what Mike was saying about Grogu and that whole thing, like, does it fit in this series? I feel like it does. Like, I know the environment is different. Like we went to a whole nother planet and we had all these characters that, you know, aren't really part of like Boba's direct storyline. But I do still feel like thematically, you know, it fit and it helped tell the story of all that we were going up to this point with Cad and Boba, because you can see like, I heard somebody call Din like the most successful father like in Star Wars history. Like
Right.
he's the best father figure, you know?
Yeah.
That's Thomas, I remember, was at the end of Mandalorian season 2, as much as we all love that. You know, I know Thomas had qualms with the whole just like, here you've built up this the best sort of father-child, you know, father-son relationship in Star Wars, and then you give him to this guy who's like, I know it's Luke, but you know, right. But what's funny though is correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, you would probably know this, but I feel like there's a good chance she does Ahsoka have any run-ins with Boba, specifically her running in with Boba in Clone Wars? Because I know he's got a couple plot lines in there, but I can't for the life of me remember if they crossed paths specifically.
I want to say no.
Because I was just because the reason I was wondering is I mean, Boba Fett is the connective tissue of this. Like the thing that everyone has in common is him. You know, Luke. I mean, if you want to go with, I was just watching the Boba's official debut, right, in the holiday special. Hello, friend. You know, it's like that's creepy. But that, you know, I mean, like you can, you know, take that or leave it. But if there's a possible way to watch that seriously, I'm like, there's direct interaction with Luke and Boba Fett, background there, you know, and then of course in the films, you know, we get they have run-ins in Empire Strikes Back, run-ins in Return of the Jedi, nothing personal, you know, but yeah, that's so like Luke's presence in the Book of Boba Fett, there's a connection, even though they don't meet at all in this show. But that was, I was just wondering about that because I think they did succeed, at least as far as it not being completely like, where's this coming from? Like episodes, whatever was like 5 and 6. And, you know, I think it all needed to happen. And
it was kind of good that she was there too in this whole father family conversation because she did make that comment, just like your father to Luke. So she was sort of that connection too.
She's the connection kind of between Mando and Luke, I think more, you know, he was more familiar with her. Yeah. Before, so that makes sense too.
My 2 cents on it would be similar, but if we are looking at, I mean, family being a core theme of Star Wars, and if we are recognizing that there is a family connection between Boba and Din, their shared culture, their shared heritage, it does make perfect sense that we would find where Din has gone, because Boba's already helped Din out, and then Din, of course, is going to be instrumental in helping Boba out as well because of that family connection. You know, I think Boba's got to be, you know, Uncle Boba now to little Grogu, which is kind of fun to think about. You know, but I see Din and Boba as brothers.
Dare I say the Godfather?
Oh, that would be so. Yeah, if Fennec could take the bad guys out, we have Boba's, we have Grogu's baptism, and while Boba's there, you see the Aqualish guy getting taken, and that's too much.
I was gonna say maybe Cobb Vanth will be the Godfather.
Oh, I'm excited about that too with him. But no.
So
his character.
Yes. We'll jump to that here in a second. There's just a few other scenes to kind of mention. You know, we have the wonderful scene of the Rancor on the loose, which, now that you mention it, King Kong, total Godzilla, you know, climbing up the bell tower and all of that. And Din tries to settle him down, and Grogu is the one who is able to use the Force to connect and put him to sleep, and then that promptly puts little Grogu to sleep as well. So we then kind of get the conclusion of things. I, to be honest, sort of forgot about Fennec Shand until this point.
Yeah.
There was
That's
so much going on.
I have a huge bullet point on that.
And she was quite a bit more ruthless than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you don't get called Master Assassin for nothing.
Right.
But
yeah.
Can I just say something about Fennec real quick here? Because this is and I want to be clear that the reason to make it very clear that I'm not criticizing her or Ming-Na Wen at all. Exactly the opposite. The title of this little mini rant I had was called Fennec Deserves Better. Was my sort of
hashtag
header, because I just two things about her character that I feel like it just deteriorated through the season in terms of things that just really bothered me. Whereas number one, I don't understand why they made her the go-to for just completely unnecessary exposition dump and tactics overview.
Yeah.
Because it just was so, and it was a repeat several times. And I was laughing because I was thinking, like, first of all, like, Boba Fett does not need to be told that you can use money to hire people to work for you to be muscle, and I was like, okay, he's like, really, that's what he did, in a way, or sometimes. But the other thing just bothered me.
My husband doesn't need to be told a lot of things that he knows already, but I also need to repeat them to him to remind him that they're a thing. So,
but the one I just thought it was too much. It's a little like like occasionally you hear a Rolling Stones song where they're really cruising and they've got a potentially good like 15 seconds of just a good instrumental kind of riff, and Mick Jagger has to oh, yeah, and it's like, Mick, like, could you step back for a second, just let it let it breathe, and I just thought, like, from a filmmaking standpoint, the Sanctuary, like, that scene's so stark and it's so powerful, and it's like we're coming into it with the emotion from the last episode. I just felt like it was just inappropriate to have Ming-Na Wen. It felt uncomfortable too. I feel like she knew it. I don't know, but to be like, okay, so let's review. Those guys are there, and those guys are there, and it's like, just show
like
that.
She was telling Din that, but it did feel that way to me. It did feel that way to me.
And then like as soon as she's done with it, it's like the moment she's done, all of that falls apart because they're all there, and even she's like But my main concern, just I know that it was important. I think my guess is it was very important for going forward, everything we've talked about between Din and Boba, to really get that relationship solid. I just felt like, we spent so much time really getting the chemistry and everything with him and with Boba and Fennec, built up. And I looked at it tonight. I double checked 32 minutes of this episode where she's like completely not even referenced. And I just thought that's just awfully long, to have her just gone, and to send her.
Yeah, she had to go to another town. I mean,
well, no, I know. Yeah, but I just thought you could have showed some of her doing something. I just felt it wasn't fair to her. But the main thing, the big head scratching thing I had was, why did we do it this way? Like, she ends up going like exactly into the same headquarters that Boba went into. To negotiate with the Pikes. Like, it's not like he didn't know where they were. So that was a little weird to me. I don't know if that was just, it was supposed to look familiar to us, but I thought if they had them go to a different location, for me, that would have maybe been a little more like, take the edge off. Like, well, why didn't we just do this in the first place? Like, just send Fennec in there in the first place and save yourself a lot of trouble. But no, my main thing was just, I love her character. I don't know. I just feel like you could have had her in here a little more in the episode.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully she's back in new seasons.
Sure.
Because she's
definitely.
Her character and Ming-Na Wen is truly, truly awesome. So,
and she'll be back in Bad Batch season 2, probably.
Probably. So. Yeah. So those are valid critiques. She does take them all out though. But like, even the mayor,
she does.
Like,
that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Because the mayor, I sort of, what I kind of noted in my notes is that's sort of what happens when politicians think that they can just get involved in criminal activity and nothing will You know, the everything will be on the up and up as far as their needs and wants. You know, it never works out that way. You know, it never is as clean as you want it to be. So it was sort of that morality tale almost, in a way, like how tragic it was his end. Like it was pretty nasty, and it's not like we were meant to like him. But he was he was furry. He had Robert Rodriguez's, friendly voice.
He did. That was so weird. I loved it.
He was a likable sort of mayor, but well, either way, he's now no longer in the picture, and that's where Boba's stepping in at this point. Couple other final scenes. We do get some hints at maybe what's coming next. When Boba and Fennec are walking down the street, and everybody's bowing to him, and Boba makes the comment that they're not suited for that, and Fennec says, "Well, then if not us, then who?" And of course, the camera pans to Chrysanthemum and the mods. But I tend to think that that's not going to be the ones to take over eventually. They might help, but I think someone else is going to step in. And I'll save that for just a minute or so.
Put a pin in there.
I'll come back to that. And then we have a final scene with Grogu, which was totally perfect. Grogu wanting to have Din hit the speed boost in the Naboo starfighter, which was great. Like any
I could watch that on repeat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there. When I was a kid, we used to have this hill by our house that was one of those that if you were going at the right speed, your stomach kind of made the jump, and it was so much fun. And so my dad would, anytime we took that road home, it was you just knew it was coming, and it was so much fun. And then they took the hill out because it was a little I don't know, probably dangerous.
Too fun.
Right. But same concept. Totally relatable.
Well, they keep hitting it out of the park with that too, because I just think of him. Remember him with the Switch, in the first season, and the doing the wiring. Like there's a good 5 or 6 that are just like, oh, I could just over and over and over. It's perfect. That's
Yep. Well, I think we can be prepared for more cuteness coming soon. The final scene would be the mid-credit scene, the post-credit scene, whatever you want to call that. And we finally get to see what happened to Cobb Vanth, and he's in the Bacta tank, and he is going to get modded and augmented. So that's kind of interesting. And that leads into my theory that I think Cobb is going to be the next mayor, or I don't know if Daimo or whatever leader of Mos Espa. I think he's going to be the one that takes over. And I suspect, and Mike, I think you mentioned it earlier too, I think Boba's connected to Mandalore a little bit more than maybe even he realizes at this point, because I think that's his true family. And if he pursues that and becomes Mandalore, it fits with his character development and where he's potentially going to go. So,
well, I can't possibly imagine a more unique, again, as we keep saying, someone who's trying to really find himself and not be, a industrialized, mass-produced face.
Mm-hmm.
Like what could possibly be more, no one else has done this, then he becomes the Mandalore, but has to earn it though, I think too. Like I think there's a great arc ahead.
In Legends, he does become Mandalore.
I didn't read those, but I've heard that.
So, a little bit differently, but same basic concept. So
yeah, Dave Filoni knows that.
Yes, he does.
Understatement of the century.
Was there any other sort of theories or thoughts that you guys had? Even I don't know, Mike, did we mention everything that you were talking about as kind of looking at the series as a whole?
just three real quick things. Number one, I don't know if we mentioned specifically back to the negotiating scene. I love that the Major Domo used Vader's line, "Dispense with the pleasantries." I was like, and it fits there perfectly, but what a different tone to it.
Yeah.
Just a funny tactical thing. Like, I understand it's a movie, it's space. I just like the veteran in me. There's a few scenes where I'm just like, from both perspectives, but mostly for the Pikes, I've got to say, like, guys, none of you have hand grenades. Like, I don't want to be brutal, but everybody you're fighting is in that one room. I'm just, just saying. But no artillery, nothing. Well, I guess that's kind of what the droids, of course, do. But the last thing, the mods, and I know it's like there's been so much piling on them, so I'm not really piling on them. I genuinely think, just my opinion, I genuinely think that the Vespa looking speeders are just a mistake. I just not the bright colors of them, because I think it's meant to recall kind of a classic, kind of car era, motorcycles and all this, and that very important for Star Wars, very important for George Lucas, of course. Everybody knows that, the role of that. But they just do not look intimidating. They look ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, they're cool. They're really, like, I'd love to have one. It'd be awesome. But it's like, I'm not someone who's trying to intimidate somebody. I'm a high school teacher. And one thing that high school teaching, of course, has taught me is being back in that world now for twice as long as I went through it the first time, which is a little weird. It's some things never change. And how high school kids can be.
Yeah.
And, like, you smell blood in the water, basically, if anything you can nitpick and make fun of. I just think, like, someone trying to roll through, like, acting tough on one of those things. It's just, I feel like everyone in Tatooine would, in fact, be standing around like, hey, guys, look, the mods are coming. So because I want to like them. And I think they really did earn their keep here with this last episode. I think of how cool speeders have always looked in Star Wars. And I just think, like, like the scout troopers, like, every time anyone's been on a speeder bike, even Cobb on, like, repurposed pod racing stuff. You remember that from, I think, season 2, the first episode with him?
Yeah,
I think it was. It just looked so cool. And the idea of, like, this makes sense, this is where they are. I don't know. For me, that's my only real hang up with them, is those things. So that's all I had, basically. We'll see. Maybe they'll get an upgrade.
Well, you brought up George Lucas. My last note was related to George as well, and that is that we know in his work he liked to pit nature versus technology a lot, or just human society as being more not so smart when we rely on technology so much for things, and so I really saw that, especially with the Rancor versus the droid, but also, as Mike said, with the gaffy stick, in that fight, that was the thing that won, in the end. So
my only final note is I wonder if Peli and the Major Domo are going to become a thing.
I didn't get that vibe. All the people that I've heard suggest that are guys. So just saying, I didn't get that vibe at all.
We'll see.
So maybe within the story, that's what he thinks, but she's not interested.
Right.
She's working on herself.
Right. Remember? Right. Okay, awesome. Well, that is going to conclude our thoughts on the finale of the Book of Boba Fett. And of course, listeners, we want to know what your thoughts were. And you can let us know in all the various ways that you can communicate with us. You can email us at starwars@sqpn.com. You can comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. And you can tweet at us and we're on Twitter at SQPN. And we would like to take a moment, of course, to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Sherry L., Timothy D., Dr. P., Craig H., and Aaron L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the show so you don't miss a single episode. You can find us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can find us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just hit that bell to get notifications of all new episodes. And you can find all of our previous episodes by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we, now that we are finished with the Book of Boba Fett, we're going to go back to a bi-weekly podcast until Kenobi comes out in May. And so we will be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to be doing something completely different, but still Star Wars. So I'm very excited for this, and also I have no idea what we're getting into. But Thomas Sanjurjo, the Ronin himself, is going to be leading us in a Star Wars RPG game. So for those of you who have enjoyed those kind of role-playing games with your friends, we're going to be doing one of those on the podcast. So I think Thomas is probably the maybe Andrew has joined in on those too, but I think most of us are newbies at this. So at least for sure I am. So this is going to be quite a different fun experience. So the next time on the podcast, we're going to be podcasting our creation process for our characters, as well as setting the scene and the scenario. And then we will jump into the actual RPG after that. So if you think that is something that you would love to listen to us do, then please join in and, definitely share your thoughts with us as we continue to go forward. So until next time, Old Ben, Mike Creevy, thanks for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And the Bendu herself, Angela Cialana, thanks for joining us as well.
It was so much fun. Thanks, guys.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.